Welcome back to the third part of exercise 22. For this one, we'll be doing the most sophisticated animation yet, and we'll be doing that on the last box, third box, labeled a sophisticated animation effect. If I go back to the HTML, I will see that this class was labeled hinge, and box were the two classes on the div tag. We're not going to edit box. Box is just that green color, but we're going to use hinge. So in my CSS, I'll find the hinge class definition, and I'll see the declaration is setting it for an animation duration of 2 seconds, and we have an animation name of hinge, which then means we're going to build a new animation, and we're going to call this one hinge. So I'll scroll down to the bottom, add a new keyframes declaration, and we'll label this one hinge, and I'll add my curly braces. So for this particular one, we're going to try something a little bit different. Why don't we start with 0%, add our curly braces. We'll do a 20%, add our curly braces. Then finally, we will do a 40%, add a curly brace. And combining it with what we did up here on the keyframe slider, we also had a 2, which sort of brought it to the end state. We're going to do the same thing here. We'll do a 2 and essentially declare what the end state should look like. Okay, so to start this off, think of this box as sort of hanging, almost like a hanging sign. And think of it's hanging in two places, and it's going to break off of where it's hanging. And think of the top left corner as holding the longest. So in other words, again, think of this as a hanging sign. Think of this top as where it's hanging. Think that it's hanging from a cable here perhaps, and a cable here. And what we're going to do is we're going to break the cable here, so the sign should swing over this direction around, basically orbiting this point. And it's just going to hang down here and swing back and forth. And at the very end, it's going to fall off. It's going to break off. That's going to be the animation. So let's go ahead and do that. So the first thing we're going to do, since we wanted this on the top left, we're going to set the transform origin. We're going to set that to be at the top left. And we're also going to set a duration timing, an animation timing function, which again sort of modifies the speed at which the animation happens to make it look a little bit more interesting. And when you think of physics, when something kind of breaks off, it sort of appears to kind of go slow and then go faster as it swings, almost like a pendulum, slows down again, and it'll swing faster toward the bottom of that pendulum. That's exactly what we'll do here by using the ease in out. That sort of modifies that speed of change of the animation. Now at 20%, think of it orbiting around that point. So we'll go ahead and add a transform. And this time we'll do a rotate 3D, like we did earlier. And we are going to pass some values again. So think of these as x, y, z coordinates, but we can also pass degrees of rotation. So we're going to do 0, 0, 1, and we'll swing it 80 degrees. That's just 80 DEG. And after the paren, don't forget the semicolon. So if you kind of think of where 45 degrees would be, so 80 degrees would almost be double that. Okay? And we will also set the transform origin. Set that again to the top left, because that's where we want that rotation to come from. That's top space left. And we want to also set that pendulum kind of swing effect. So we'll do the timing function. We'll set that to ease in out, like so. Okay. So then at 40%, we want that swing to sort of return back to almost where it originally started. Maybe not quite that extreme, but maybe back to 45 or even 60 degrees. So just save some time by copying these 3 lines. And we're going to paste them in here under the 40%. Clean up the code to make it look good. And now, instead of rotating 80 degrees, we're going to rotate it 60 degrees. And we're going to do it from the top left, ease in and out. That should look good. So let's save that. And let's do the 2 value. This is the end location. So for this, we'll use a transform. And we'll set a translate 3D. And we'll set a 0, comma, and we'll do 700 pixels. So this item is going to fall 700 pixels. And set that to 0. Whoops, set that to 0 like so. And once it falls off, we want it to disappear. So we'll set the opacity to 0 here too. And since we're ending with an opacity value of 0, it's good practice to put a starting value here of opacity and set that to 1. Like so. And clean up that extra row. So let's see what happens when we save this and run this. So this one will run on the load, not on the hover. When I run it, notice it swings and it falls off. It doesn't quite swing enough. It swings one way, comes back just a little bit, and falls off. I think we can improve upon that. And the way we'll do that is our animation is not really complete. It's a 2-second animation, but we're only using keyframes in the first 40%. So we've got keyframe for 0, for 20 to 40. Now let's imagine if we're at this 40% and it's swung back toward the right. Now we want to swing it back toward the left. So we want it back here. So what we could do is we could add a value, or we could add a declaration for 60% and put the exact same information again. But there's a shortcut. Instead of doing that, we can do 20%, comma, space 60%. So now this same keyframe value applies at the 20% and at the 60. So it'll show this at 0. It'll transform till it hits the 20% keyframe, add these values. Then, knowing it's going to head toward these values, it's going to go from 20 to 40%, back to 60%, back to the end. Well, we also have an 80% we could try. So let's put an 80% right here. Just like so. Okay. So now we've added our values, and I'm going to just quickly try to show this. When I refresh, notice it swings one way. Kind of just doesn't look very realistic. It swings and just kind of breaks off. Now I'm going to go ahead and save this. When we run it again now, hopefully it'll have more of a pendulum effect, and then it breaks off. Looks a little bit more interesting, draws your eye to it a little bit more. That was the whole purpose of that. So I hope you think CSS animations are as much fun as I do. Again, they take a lot of practice, so don't think that the very first time they're going to make a lot of sense and be easy, but you can try using images, you can try moving boxes, try using patterns, for example, have a box move up, down, left, right. You can do all sorts of different things. I encourage you to practice, practice, practice until you feel really comfortable with these CSS animations. At the end of this file, in the HTML file, be sure to go and add in down here at the bottom, after that last div, go ahead and add in the difficulty level as well as the version number, just so you have that for your own notes. Save your files often. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this exercise.